concern of mine, and I think Judy knows that we're maybe looking at some policy that says if somebody, not a specific company, meets the criteria where there's an open investigation or the results or need for a hearing or some investigation into them, that we get some protections, because I really struggle today to put one of our dollars into a company that's in that environment. The issues they had that we talked about at the PUC hearing, they were 10 years old and not a thing has changed. In fact, it's even gotten worse. All of the issues that arose during that conversation, and I was at a couple of them, they each had about 100 people at them. And there, you want to take care of those that come up in the particular issues in which they had. They had customer service aides, they had everybody. Two things came out of it. One, they didn't do what they said they were going to do, even for the people in that room. They made it worse. And two, I invited both of the senior vice presidents to come to us, to me, and talk about what we're going to do. We need a plan that includes and covers everybody. And when we have, regardless of it's a particular company, if we have an area that has a willing provider, an unwilling provider, what are we going to do? And I know Dan is back there, and I know the commissioner's here. I want them and I want everybody to put together plans. One of the things that we talked about were we've done enough of these grants today, and they work great, the communities that are served. It takes full involvement in the community, right? Every leader, I think we got a few of our leaders here, in my community, and where we are, we've got to be having that conversation about this. It's important, and here's the reasons why it's important for our community. To make sure you're not in a reactionary mode, and that it's a discovery, and because there's some cost, there's some skin in the game for everybody. But every one of our elected leaders has to lead that conversation, and then go out. I think our most recent one in my district was Fish Lake Township. They actually put together a plan and went out and got 50% of the households. They did a survey. They also went out and door knocked on every one of them. That's what every one of our communities needs to do. Make sure and educate everybody to know, here's why it's important to you. Most of our community have no idea what they're missing. and at the cost in which they're incurring to just have the basic forms of communication. We need it. I won't cover, everybody here knows why we need it, right? Because I'm to our children to even be a good consumer, not just on the purchasing side, which we're all pretty good at, but even on the service side, when you go to get customer service, any access to information, there's only one source, and it's over the internet, and we need good access. But I would ask, and Dan and the commissioners, we need to put together a series of policies and a series of packages that are how-to packages from nuts and bolts, beginning A to B, on how one, you go out there, what you should be talking about, the finer points. One, a business plan that tells you exactly how to get it, what the funding options are, whether you have a willing provider, whether you have multiple providers, what are those providers, and how are you going to put together a holistic package and financing and service and all those aspects. And taking into consideration, when you don't have a willing provider, what do you do? What are going to be your options? I'd hate to cable over somebody, but in many cases, in that particular scenario, and that provider has a huge portion of my entire Senate district, and so it's extremely important that we have a solution. I don't know that they have a way out. When I met with them on that day, I said, as I see it, you're 10 years behind when you complete your upgrades without a plan for the future. We can't afford that. I'm tired of being 10 years behind and playing catch up, and 2 years later, we're still 10 years behind. With the advancement and the growth of those communication needs in our community, 4K TV, all of the things that we talk about, I've been in systems all my life. Programmers get less efficient when you have more capacity. We consume the capacity, so not only is our demand growing, but the actual size of the volume of the data and the packets within it is growing exponentially on top of it. So we'll struggle to just stay 10 years behind if we don't have a good plan. So you have my commitment, and anybody has any questions, Judy knows I carried the bill last year, we carried it this year. Funding, right? We have opening negotiations. I think there's room for movement. We'll fight for every dollar we can get because it's critical for our community. I'd also, request in my district, we've got 2 very active counties who are leading the charge. I'd make sure that every one of you is make sure to pressure your counties. I think that's where you can get the great leadership. Because if you're not tackling it locally, it's not going to happen. So you need to get involved, get the community groups involved, and anything we can do to help, I'll do it. So you have my commitment, and Judy, I don't know if anything specific, if you want to take a couple questions or...
We've got a couple minutes.
Couple questions? Anything I didn't cover? Any question?
Well, okay.
I'm wondering if there's a way to look at this as it was done back in the day when electricity came into, you know, and why we can't do some kind of a similar plan to make this a utility.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. When I talk about it in our community, it's as important, if not more important, as our roads. And I come from a township, and don't mess with our roads. But it really is. But we're fighting the very same battle. We really are. So the metro area and everybody who happens to have a fiber cable with access, we got lots of fiber, no access. You know, they're good, right? They say, hey, we're good. We just leave it at that. So that's the continued pressure that everybody in our community, you know, has to get out. Every elected leader in your community has to put this. I think it should be a #1 calendar or agenda issue on every single calendar for every elected official that we have in our community. And that only then can we derive the mass pressure from the community in rural America. And by the way, it's not even that rural where we still don't have access. You know, and so, but that's what it's going to take. But we're fighting the same battle. The cities and many elected politicians, hey, we're good. We got ours. You know, they'll have 10 gigabyte before we have something that's useful and functional.
Well, it's like the farmers back in the day.
Yep. But I think what's happened today is the need for it. I think if you looked at a correlation study, it'd be very similar to electrification in our roads, right? If we kept the same mentality that we're battling today, we'd never have roads in rural Minnesota, and we never have electricity. So the city people who like to go vacation at the lake home in northern Minnesota, it wouldn't exist. But that is what we're battling today. I think the only way you're going to change it is everybody gets involved and everybody makes it a top priority in their community. One, from an education perspective, most don't understand the need. You know, ours is a bedroom community. We have 70% of our people commute to the cities. We've got lots of businesses in our community, self-employed business, which is the greatest thing about the internet. Some of the business we even know about. But those are the things that we're struggling for because of where we're at, just to keep the people we have, more or less attract new people. So high quality life, close proximity, but I think the only way outside of that, we can't scream any louder here, but we're going to need the support troops and everybody, much the reason you're here today. Every single elected official should have that on top priority and give a monthly update exactly what they're doing to, 1, figure out the need, 2, figure out what the cost is, and figure out how you're going to do it. So, question here?
How about more teeth in the bill so that the incumbents don't get away with what they're getting away with? And not charge for up to an amount, actually deliver.
So we've talked about the policy and the challenge process. And the challenge process, I have a policy bill that we'd like to put some teeth and make sure that happens. And again, I want DEED, and Office of Broadband Technology, I want them to put together the operational functional plans, give you a how-to, you know, for all the scenarios. Give you the template that you can start to take, and a lot of our local officials, you know, many don't have any idea, right? In our rural community, a lot of townships, you know, older population, they don't understand the need or what are the functional steps necessary to even begin the journey. So that's, you know, we are working to get some policy in there that makes sure we tighten it up, because we do have to have a policy for the more challenging issues. One is that an unwilling incumbent,
Right.
you know, one that functions well where they choose to serve, right, versus one that doesn't function well regardless of where they serve. We have all those different scenarios, and we have to have a plan. We've done enough of them today with the grants and the implementation to see what works well, what doesn't work well. But we're making it more complicated with the piecemeal process that we've got to do. It's better than nothing, right, for communities that take charge. But we're still leaving the rest of Minnesota out on the limb and hope they figure it out. We're just, every day we're not moving a decade behind, we're moving 11 years behind, 12 years behind. Every year we wait. So, one more question in the back?
Yeah, I'm dealing with the same frontier issue that you were talking about. Legislation is a great thing, and I hope that comes to pass. But what can we do as private citizens to hold them to account for what they have done?
I would still say, because there's 2 open processes, and they're not quite, because remember, they have a combination of issues. Telecommunications, of course, regulated. The internet and broadband isn't. So they're trying to figure out where they go. I would encourage everybody, even though the report, the official testimony period is over, I would encourage everybody, write to the PUC and write to the Department of Commerce. I'm not sure where else you would go, but those would be the 2 regulatory bodies that I would give them and keep up the pressure. Because, again, I don't see a future for them. I have to speak honestly. I really don't. And based on not my words, based on their words and their actions. So, Judy, what do we have for time?
I think we should, Representative
Representative?
Eckley is here
Okay.
just to turn it, so.
Great. I appreciate. Thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, Judy can help you find me. Once you're elected,